Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Stephanie Otts. I'm the director of the National Sea Grant Law Center. Thank you all so much for joining us today for our first Water Resources Vision All Hands Call. The Water Resources Leadership Team, as we've been calling each other right now, is excited to see the interest and to re-engage the network that was so active when we were developing the vision call. And so I also wanted to let you know that Karen Fairford is here and will be helping run the webinar today, and we'll talk a little bit more about our role as we go on. But Karen, do you want to go to the next slide and kick us off? So we're going to try a new thing. So patience, if you haven't used this before, we're using Poll Everywhere to try to get some input today. We have a very short amount of time, only an hour for this call. And we also want to start filling out our membership list. I have your name and your program, but we don't really know the primary water resource issue that you focus on most. So you can do this a couple different ways. If you see at the top of the slide, you can go in your browser to pollev.com/CDEAN464. Then you can just, follow the prompts after that to get to this page that will let you answer our questions. But you can also text on your phone if you want to do it that way. So while people are kind of getting that, navigating there, just wanted to give a little bit of background about, kind of why we were calling it here today. So it's a little hard to realize that it's been 2 years since the group was really active. So back in 2017, 2018, while we were developing the water resource vision, there was a lot of work and communication around those meetings. But then there was, we all had to go off and do different things. And then this year, COVID hit. And so this call today is a chance for us to update you on what's been happening so far and where we would like to go and get your input into, all of this. And so this is great to see everybody's answers coming in. And like I said, we'll be using your responses to help us make a more robust membership list that will then help with planning for the activities that we're thinking about and engaging people as we move forward. So Karen, I don't know if we go to the next slide, if that will shut down that poll question, or
we can continue to let it run, or we can just go to the next slide, either way.
Okay. If you miss your chance on the Poll Everywhere because of the way that it goes with the slides, please use the chat to do the same thing and we'll combine it all. So Karen, I guess we can go to the next slide. Okay, so as I said, we just wanted to touch on what we've done so far and what's been happening since 2018. Next slide. So when we refer to the Sea Grant Water Resources Visioning Leadership Team, there are a lot of people that were involved in the planning of the vision workshop and the document back in 2018, but we've had some turnover, and it's just this is the group of people that have been trying to continue the conversations since 2018. And so we just wanted to let you know, who's been talking and who's kind of behind the effort so far. And Karen and I have offered to kind of co-facilitate this re-engagement with the network, and we'll be providing support for webinars and other activities. But we want help. We want to empower you all in this group to engage and take on some leadership roles. So we'll be looking for volunteers and partners moving forward. So this list is not exclusive, and we anticipate that it'll change and evolve over time. Next slide. So with respect, just a refresher, because I know some people are new and may not have been involved in the water resources visioning document development. So 48 participants and contributors from 21 programs across the network. We were looking at what our current capacity in water resources was at the time, where programs were dedicating their time and resources, and what we want to work on. Next slide. Yeah, in the future. So in the process, we had a lot of different opportunities for input, and there were 59 unique topics submitted by the contributors. So one thing that is important to think about, we recognize that water resources as a topic is huge, and it touches on almost everything that Sea Grant does. And so this is always going to be a bit of a challenge with our network, is there's just a lot of different pieces to water resources. And we anticipate that and would love for subgroups to kind of emerge that focus and drill down into some of these topics that are too large to really tackle on a national level or by an entire group. Next slide. So we have 4 main themes: land management, restoration, development, water planning and social economics, water infrastructure, environmental and human health. This is all laid out in the vision document, so I encourage everybody to refresh their memory about what's in there and think about how we can move forward with some of the themes and objectives that we identified. Next slide. So we had the in-person workshop in May 2018. Karen hosted us at the National Water Center. It was a great meeting. We had a lot of really good discussions and developed what I think was a really nice 10-year vision plan. Next slide. And just our vision statement, right? National Sea Grant College Program engages with communities on critical water resources challenges and opportunities through research, outreach, and education to facilitate knowledge-based solutions, right? So we're looking at all 3 of the Sea Grant legs of the Sea Grant stool and working on a wide range of research, engagement, outreach, education, extension, law and policy programming, right? The whole range of what we do. Next slide. This is just a slide that shows the strategic priorities. We did identify 7, and so there's lots of activities already identified in the plan or could potentially fit under these priorities. Next slide. So that was a whirlwind tour of an overview of the original water resources plan, but that brings us to kind of where we are now. So the water resources leadership team did write a proposal for the recent call for visioning proposals. Kelly Donaldson out of Pennsylvania Sea Grant also led an effort to submit a proposal related to water resources to that call. Unfortunately, neither one of those proposals was selected for funding, but it was a really useful exercise to think about what activities we might want to do in the future. And so we want to continue and pick up some of those ideas that were in those proposals. And so one of the thoughts was to have a webinar series that can just help us get started as a network and give us something to plan for and network around. Next slide. So here's our initial thoughts regarding the webinar series. Now we will be gaining input, and as we get more engagement from you all and people start planning, these goals and objectives might change. And so this is just a snapshot of our original thinking. So for now, we envision the audience for the webinar series to be internal, to be us, the Sea Grant Network. And we're hoping to, as a first step, to raise the visibility of water resources programming that we're already doing within the Sea Grant Network to the National Sea Grant Office, among the programs and among ourselves and our colleagues. to highlight innovative research, outreach, and activities at all scales. And to provide opportunities for the participants of the webinars to inform our Sea Grant water resources planning, whatever that might be. And so we, as a team, kicked around a lot of ideas about potential topics for webinars, and we really wanted some input from the network before we outlined the entire webinar series, but we also thought it would be helpful to have something started to kick off to get the process going while we were working on additional webinars. So our hope is to do at least 3 webinars next year, maybe 4 if people get ambitious and excited. But our first one, we decided to focus on COVID-19. Next slide. So again, we just wanted to pick a topic that we thought was timely, that we could kind of plan fairly quickly, and to launch the webinar series while we're planning additional topics. And so our target dates here are the last 2 weeks in January of 2021. We have not set a date yet because we're still working with our invited speakers to find what would be the best time. But we want to highlight Sea Grant research and outreach on COVID-19 in the water environment. The presentation topics that we're considering right now is to start that webinar with some sort of state of the science regarding aerosols and what we know, but also the type of questions that Sea Grant programs were wrestling with back in February and March when the pandemic hit. Like, how do you do your work on water topics when you have something like this going on? And then we want to highlight 2 research projects that are funded by Sea Grant programs, one about testing at beaches in Lake Superior, and then Pennsylvania Sea Grant has a wastewater project. And then Lake Champlain Sea Grant was involved in some outreach for their water quality monitors about how to safely continue to do their work and how to answer their questions, again, in this uncertain area. And then for all of the webinars, we would like and hope that there is some sort of output from these webinars, and it might be different depending on what the focus of the webinar is, but we are thinking for the COVID webinar, it might be a short summary or an issue brief on the topic, as well as summaries of the facilitated discussions that we plan on having after the presentations, where we're going to encourage participants to think about how this information can be used as they're developing new Sea Grant RFPs, or how do we make sure that all the researchers working on these projects are networked together, and different things like that. Next slide. Okay, so this brings us to what we want to hear from you. As I said, we want to have at least 2 more webinars in 2021. There are so many different topics that we could focus on. We're going to open this poll, and you can stay at the same browser you were at when you were filling out your name and program. And we would like to see from you, what topics do you think the other webinars should focus on? Wow, I didn't know that was gonna like switch up that way. It's cool to see it come in.
Typical meal comes from Sunbasket. With Sunbasket's new fresh and oven-ready meal.
Yeah, so it's good to see all the answers coming in with this. So this is great. So as we're looking at this, I would also encourage you. So the way that we hope to do that for the COVID webinar, we have a small planning team. It's Karen and myself just providing support to make sure that the calls happen and to facilitate some discussions. But Jenna Hawkswell at Wisconsin Sea Grant and Sam Chan at Oregon and Kelly Donaldson have been helping to plan out the COVID-19 webinars. So for the webinars, the topics that are kind of rising to the top here, we would want to form small planning teams to help plan those webinars and to carry them out. And so as you see these topics coming in, if you would be interested and willing and serving on a planning committee to make these webinars happen, love to see that. You can volunteer in the chat box. As I mentioned, you wouldn't be on your own. In sense that, you know, the Law Center would likely provide the platform like we're doing right now to host the webinar, but we would like the people who volunteer for the planning committee to be the ones identifying the speakers, reaching out to the speakers, deciding, you know, what is a good time for that, helping to think about what the output should be and who might be able to develop those outputs and different things like that.
Stephanie, if I may also, if there's some compelling topic that we missed that you think is just super ripe and something that you might like to lead this year, please also add that in the chat.
Yeah, right. And I should also mention that we are recording the call today because we know that not everybody who is interested in being involved in the network could make it today. And so we're going to make this recording available for viewing after the call today, as well as convert the polling questions here to a survey so that anybody who couldn't join today can watch the recording and then submit their answers to the poll questions through the survey. And so if there are other topics that you think that we should be included, those could be incorporated into our follow-up survey or just captured in our notes from the call. It must be, we must be in a close tie for some of them. They keep flipping back and forth. Okay. Good, well, I'll just give it one more minute in case anybody out there hasn't had a chance to answer or submit their poll question yet. Good, and thanks for all the volunteers in the chat. That's great. Okay. Okay, Karen, I guess we can move on to the next one. Okay, so the webinar series was just one idea that the leadership team had. Okay, so someone said if ask about topics for the COVID-19 webinar. Yes, if you have related COVID-19 related activities that you think would be good to include, yes, I would love to hear that. You can send me an email separately and I can take that to Sam and Jen and the group that's been working on that to see about that. Because we also, even if we don't have a chance to feature everything in the webinar, we would definitely want to include that in any product that we would be developing. So absolutely send your ideas. Yeah, so it looks like great. Thanks for that in the chat.
Stephanie, the only other thing that I saw come up, someone asked if maybe we might combine some of these topics, and we can certainly do that, you know, entertain that concept as well.
Yeah, so great. Good. So this is all great. So like I said, the webinars was just something to get us started, right? Something to have an activity that we as a group can rally around, right? But there's the much bigger question about where do we want to go? So we're a group of about 40, 50 people right now that are working on water resources issues and want to know what is going on. So we have a couple of planning questions, polling questions that we want to work through. And, you know, I think we'll have time to open this up for discussion, you know, as we're going through this. So please continue to use the chat, but also when we, get through the polling, you can raise your hand or let, if you have something you want to share verbally, let us know in the chat. But so the questions are, kind of related to what topics do we want to focus on, or think about moving forward more at a more discrete level than what we just showed, those big broad categories. And then how frequently do we want to meet, and what do we want to learn about when we meet? So next slide, Karen. Okay. So our first big, put your thinking caps on, right? So planning question is, what are the most pressing water resources topics for us to address? This is wide open. This is just a brainstorming exercise to get us thinking about what people are working on, what they're seeing in their communities, what they're doing research on.
If you want words to be linked, please put an underscore between them, and that will keep those words together.
So just to let everyone, I was fascinated by watching the word cloud emerge. This is the first time I've used or seen a poll everywhere like this, so I got a bit distracted. Thanks everyone for all your great answers and input. We'll let it go for a couple more minutes. And I think that one of the first things that hits me with this word cloud is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of diversity in our network. There's a lot of different topics, a lot of interest in many different things, which I think is great. It just shows how important water is and our water resources programming. But as I mentioned, the leadership team recognizes that we're going to have subgroups that emerge and network, and maybe in the future we have a lot of different groups working on more targeted or focused areas. Like maybe we have a HAB group, an emerging contaminant group, a stormwater group, and then on these, in the larger network, we're all kind of reporting up and learning and hearing about everyone. Good. Okay. Well, Karen, I think we can, looks like we got a lot captured. It stopped moving a little bit. I think we can go on to the next question. Okay. So this one is just, we want to get a little bit of input, and this might be hard to answer because, some of you might think, oh, I want to do all these things, right? But we're trying to think about, if we have these all hands calls on a regular basis, what would we as a group want to focus on? What do we think is most useful? So just a little background for our shorthand. So program updates, thinking that would be like round robin, a representative from each Sea Grant program would talk about what they have going on. Brainstorming project planning would be like the strategic planning, like if like related to webinars, or if we want to do some fact sheets or projects. Yeah, and like regional breakouts would just be to have time dedicated on the calls so that people could break out. I probably should have also mentioned, we could possibly also do that topically, but I just had regional breakouts for the purposes of today. And then formal topical presentations would, invited guest speakers or even someone from a Sea Grant program to give a longer, more detailed presentation on what they had. And like with the other polls, if we're missing something, if you have an idea for what the all hands calls could accomplish, please share that in the chat. And we really just have one more poll question remaining, and we're doing really great on time. So Karen and I were thinking that we can open it up to discussion. I think we have a small enough group. You can take yourself off of mute. I don't know if we have the hand raise function, but you can also type in the chat if you'd like to talk. But I think we can open it up for some discussion about your reaction to what you've heard so far, or if there's other members of the leadership team on the call that want to add something that I flew past or skipped over, this is a great opportunity. Or if you have any questions, if we've confused anybody.
Hi, Stephanie. For this last question, when we're talking about all hands calls, the all hands call, does that mean the webinar series, or is it something that's separate?
It's something that is separate. Yeah. So yeah, I think it would be like this one. So where we're just, covering some topics that, we want to talk about, or maybe we're trying to get input, or maybe, the first part is updates about what is going on in the network, and the second part is regional breakouts, or, something. But yeah, they would be separate from the webinar series.
Hey, Stephanie, I think some people may be confused what you asked that you want us to come off mute for.
Oh, okay. No, that is perfectly fine. I was just offering that we are ahead of schedule and that we can have an open discussion about any questions you have about the Water Resources Network, or ideas or thoughts that you would like to share for group consideration. Does that help?
And that might include things that you think we should focus on in future calls, or other ideas as well. We're open to what you all have to say and what your ideas are, and really expanding the engagement with everyone.
This is Reed Porter from Rhode Island Sea Grant Legal Program. I think it's hard to, it's good to see everybody, first of all, although, most of us are just sharing pictures here. I'll turn my video on. Since it's been 2 years since we were together, and it's good to see this group back together. One of the things that I found really inspiring about the meeting we had in 2018 was just sort of hearing what other Sea Grant programs are working on, because it, it sort of broadened my understanding of what we could consider in our state. So one of the things that I think would be useful is just to have us learn from each other in terms of what we're working on. So that's sort of my thought about what I would hope to get out of this community network, or I don't know if we're a community of practice or a network or what the jargon is, but sort of thinking through how each of us is working and whether there are opportunities for us to work together collaboratively in the future. So.
Yeah, thanks, Reed. That's great. And some of that is what I was thinking in this brainstorming project planning option, is just to provide space for people to share and network and learn more about where the connections can be made.
Stephanie, we also had a suggestion for maybe a Google Drive where we could share documents and different things related to research on topics of importance across the programs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great suggestion. Yeah, I think any options or ways that we can just make it easy for people to share what they're working on and make those connections will be good. All right, that sounds good. And none of these polls are set in stone. These were just some general questions to give us some ideas, and that we will definitely be engaging more with the group as we start planning some of these more standard kind of activities like these all hands calls. And Karen, I guess next slide. So we wanted to ask and just get a feel for what people thought would be feasible and reasonable to do. Certainly in 2020, we now live our lives on Zoom. And so we are well aware of Zoom fatigue. And so this is just a question about if we're thinking about having all hands calls on a regular basis, what's a good frequency that we could do this? Now, that's not to say subgroups within the network wouldn't meet in between. We would have webinars and other opportunities in between. This question was just about a call like this one, what frequency that could be.
And we're also open to this, evolving over time. We're just talking about what might be started right now, and then we can evolve.
Yeah, and someone else in the chat box suggested that as we share resources at the programs, like maybe help to work on a list or a visual to make connections to experts. I think that's another great idea, to have a resource of just who can you reach out to that works on, certain issues would be great. So these are all good ideas, so keep them coming. Okay, this is great. So Karen, do you want to just go to the last slide and we can open it up again. So I'll just share a little bit about what we think are the immediate next steps. So the planning committee for the COVID webinar is meeting on, we're meeting bi-weekly every other week. So it's great to see the thoughts and input in the chat. And as I mentioned, feel free to email myself if you have other ideas. I think we have a call coming up next week, maybe with that group, they start to run together. But we would love your input into that. Thanks to the people who volunteered to help out on the planning for additional webinars. Karen and I will review the chat and reach out to those individuals who expressed an interest to see about forming planning committees and starting preliminary conversations about what those webinars might look like, what might be good timing for those. I mean, we're obviously looking further out into next year, into the spring and summer, as well as thinking about the schedule and timing for the next all hands call and some resources that we can put together between now and then to just help us get connected, right? Like share the current membership list. I would also encourage you, if you have other Sea Grant colleagues that you think should be part of this group, to encourage them to join and to let us know so they can participate as well. Karen, I don't know if you had other thoughts or if anybody else, Sam and Mary or others, or anybody from the rest of the group just wanted to share anything or ask questions.
Yes, Stephanie, one thing, first of all, the last slide actually has Stephanie's email address on it. So if you have questions, please reach out. The other thing, we are recording this webinar, and we know there's a lot of people that weren't able to make it. And so one of the things that we're also going to do is we're going to take the poll questions and turn them into a survey. And we're going to link the recording and the survey to Stephanie's webpage. So if you know people that are interested and want to participate, we encourage you guys to, for those individuals to come and watch the video, participate with the polls via survey, and we will close that by, did we say the end of next week, Stephanie?
I think so. I think we said give folks at least a week, maybe a little bit into that Thanksgiving week, but we don't want it to get lost over Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So we'll compile all of the results from today as well as what comes in from the survey, and we will reach back out with you. But definitely, if you know individuals who are interested, please encourage them to watch the video and participate in the survey sometime between now and we'll say a week from Friday.
Stephanie,
Go, Mary.
Oh, I just wanted to say hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see you, many of you, or hear you. And we are really pleased and thank you for your time. We really are happy to have everyone come back together. And that this great presentation that Stephanie has presented along with Karen and others, this is just our first kind of formulation. And this is really not our water team. This is your water team. This is our team together, and we can make it whatever we want it to be. And if you have ideas going forward that may seem like I'm not sure if it fits in, reach out, because I bet it will fit in. And if you want to do it, we want to do it. We are all a Sea Grant family, and it should reflect the complexity and richness of all of us as programs and as individuals. So I just wanted to make sure that this is not meant to in any way define our water resources portfolio, but just to provide an opportunity for us to get back together and begin to build that into whatever vision that we want.
Thanks, Mary. Yeah, that's great. I have forgot to mention that, in some of our discussions, we also talked about the possibility of getting some products out there, whether they're fact sheets or, issue briefs, but not that we would write them. But if somebody was really excited about a topic and wanted to work with a group of colleagues, Karen and I and others can, maybe provide some support for that and help that, come to fruition. And so we're really looking for your ideas, things that you would like to do that maybe you just feel like you can't do on your own, and could use a little support through the network on that. And so if you have thoughts and ideas that maybe you don't feel comfortable sharing today, because like Mary said, you're not sure it fits, please reach out, email any of us. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I would also just like to reiterate what Stephanie and Mary both have said. This is, we've been trying to keep this alive, and we recognize that one of the biggest things we need to do is re-engage with you all, because it needs to be everyone's. And so please reach out, give us ideas, and make suggestions, and please keep coming, because we won't be able to do this without all of you.
Yeah, and we also know that there's probably lots of conversations on the subgroup level. As like Reed said, the terminology change, is it a community of practice, is it a network? We know there are conversations around emerging contaminants, around HABs. There's probably other groups that have been working on discrete issues, and we want them all to be a part of the network and to be part of the conversation and kind of under this very diverse umbrella. And so, and also regional groups, like the Mid-Atlantic is working on organizing kind of around in the Mid-Atlantic region. So again, we want to learn what everybody's doing and help support your efforts so that we can just have a robust network. Okay. Okay. Well,
Hi, Stephanie. This is Fran from Guam. I just wanted to say thank you for organizing this call and sharing the document on the water quality resources group. I'm new to CRAN. I've just been here for 2 years, and I didn't know that there was a water quality group. So I'm excited that it's being revived right now. So I look forward to future calls and webinars and learning about what others are doing. So thank you.
thanks, Fran, and thank you so much for joining. It's probably very early for you, so I appreciate it. Oh, yeah.
And also, Fran, your suggestion about the need for virtual diagnosis and problem solving in the technical areas like engineering, water engineering, others, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. We need to probably think more about that, because I think that's really needed.
Yep, thank you.
And thank you to Kelly for also raising that point.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everyone. We're so efficient today. We got through everything we wanted to do. Maybe we can give everybody back 10 minutes of their lives today. But yeah, I thank everyone so much for joining us today. Please email us and reach out. We'll be following up with an email about how to access the recording. And if you had a technology problem with Poll Everywhere, you can submit on the survey, and we'll be following up with lots of things. So I just really am excited about the enthusiasm and the response we got to reinvigorating the group, and I really appreciate everyone's time today. And thanks, Karen, for running the Poll Everywhere.